At my birthday dinner paid for by my grandparents, my brother threw Sprite at me. Because I picked a restaurant he hated, my parents defended him and said, "Don't overreact." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I looked down at the puddle spreading across the tablecloth and slowly smiled. Because deep down I knew this wasn't about dinner. This was about something bigger, something that had been building for years. And now finally it was out in the open, for everyone to see. My name is Noah Bennett. I'm 17. I live in Plano, Texas with my parents and my younger brother Jackson. We're what you'd call a picture-perfect suburban family on paper. My dad Greg works in corporate finance. My mom Melissa runs a successful real estate agency. Jackson's 15 and plays varsity football even though he barely trains. And me, I'm the quiet one, the mature one, the one they count on to understand, to compromise, to be the bigger person. At school, I get decent grades, help run the yearbook club, and tutor underclassmen. I'm the kid who doesn't make a fuss. I used to think that made me the favorite. It didn't. It made me invisible. Jackson doesn't even have to try. If he wants something, he gets it. Always. We eat where he wants, watch what he wants. Go on vacations that fit his schedule. For birthdays, achievements, even casual Friday night dinners he picks. Me? I learned not to bother. I learned to accept we'll go somewhere everyone likes, which somehow never included my favorite spots. Especially not the little Thai fusion place downtown that I loved, the one with the yellow curry that tasted like warmth and comfort. Too spicy, Jackson always whined. Weird textures. Smells like grass. So naturally, we never went. And for years, I swallowed it. I convinced myself it was just a phase. That eventually someone would notice I was always the one compromising. That being considerate would pay off. But it didn't. Until one summer day out of nowhere, my grandparents showed up. They live up in Portland, my dad's parents. Old school, but the good kind. Ruth and Marvin. The kind of people who bring homemade jam when they visit, who remember your favorite comic book artist, and who somehow always know when something's off. They came down to stay with us for a couple weeks in June, and it just so happened to be the week of my 17th birthday. I wasn't expecting anything major. Probably pizza again, probably Jackson picking the place, probably me smiling politely and pretending it was fine. But 2 days before my birthday, Grandma Ruth pulled me aside while we were cleaning up after dinner. "Noah," she said softly, "if you could go anywhere for your birthday dinner, where would you pick? Don't worry about anyone else. Just you." I hesitated. I'd been trained not to answer questions like that honestly, but something about her voice, the way she looked at me, gentle, direct, I just said it. "Lotus and lime," I whispered. "The Thai fusion place." She nodded once like it confirmed something she already knew. "We'll take care of it," she said, squeezing my hand. Your parents don't get to dictate everything, and they didn't. On my birthday, we all piled into the car. Jackson was already complaining about being dressed up. I knew something was up, but I didn't know exactly how far my grandparents would go until we pulled into the restaurant lot and Marvin announced with a grin, "Surprise, we've been wanting to try this place for years. Our treat." My mom blinked, obviously caught off guard. My dad looked annoyed. Jackson groaned so loud I swear people in the next building heard it. But I kept my mouth shut and slid out of the car. Inside, the staff greeted us warmly. The place smelled amazing lemongrass, basil, garlic. For once, I didn't have to fake excitement. The dinner was beautiful. Until Jackson started, complaining about the menu, making faces at the food, whispering snide comments. My parents scolded him half-heartedly, but no one really stopped him. Then, the Sprite. And that silence. I looked up, met each of their eyes, and smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was finally done pretending. That moment. The sticky shirt, the soaked table, the tight knot in my chest, it became the moment I realized I wasn't the one causing drama. I'd been surviving it. And what happened after that? You won't believe it. because they thought I was just going to sit there and take it again. But I didn't. Before we go on, if you've ever been the one who always had to understand the one who got the short end just to keep the peace, hit that like button. And subscribe if you're tired of being told to be mature while others act like children. This is the story of how I took back my voice, my birthday, and maybe a little bit of justice too. Ready? Let's go. Growing up in the Bennett household wasn't exactly painful. It was more like slowly fading into the wallpaper. I wasn't neglected. I had food on the table, clothes on my back, a roof over my head. But what I didn't have was presence. I wasn't seen, not really. And I learned early on that speaking up usually led to nothing changing unless it made things worse. So I stopped trying. I adapted. Jackson didn't have to adapt. He thrived. Loud, impulsive, messy he was, everything I wasn't. And my parents couldn't get enough of him. They called it charisma, said he had spirit. I called it getting away with everything. If he didn't like something, it was immediately off the table. If I didn't like something, I was told to be flexible. I was the easy one, the low-maintenance child. And somehow that meant my needs came last every single time. It started with little things, choosing movies, picking board games, deciding where we sat at restaurants. But the moment it truly sank in was my 13th birthday. I'd wanted to try this local Korean BBQ place downtown. I'd heard about it from a friend and was genuinely excited. But Jackson refused, said he didn't like weird food, even though he'd never tried it, even though it wasn't his birthday. My mom sighed and said, "Let's just go to Tony's Pizza. Everyone likes Tony's." I didn't say anything, just nodded and went along. That night I picked at greasy garlic knots and soggy crust, while everyone else laughed like nothing was off. That was the first time I remember feeling invisible. It became a pattern. Birthdays, report cards, even awards nights, every celebration somehow turned into something that catered to Jackson. He got to choose the restaurant, the dessert, sometimes even the guest list. My preferences were just optional. My dad used to say, "You're older. You understand more." As if understanding meant I didn't get to feel hurt. As if being older meant forfeiting basic consideration. By the time I turned 16, I stopped trying to make suggestions. I knew the drill. Jackson would whine, my parents would bend, and I'd end up sitting at some noisy pizza joint while pretending the cheese didn't taste like plastic. Once I tried ordering a salad just to be different, and Jackson made gagging sounds the whole time I chewed. My dad laughed. I didn't. Afterward, I got in trouble for creating tension. At school, I wasn't exactly popular, but I had my people, friends who saw me, who let me choose the playlist sometimes or asked what movie I wanted to watch. I clung to those friendships like they were oxygen. I even started working part-time at a bookstore downtown, mostly just weekends and holidays. It was quiet there, peaceful. No one interrupted me. No one compared me to someone louder. For the first time, I felt like I had a space that belonged to me. And then came senior year, college applications, letters of recommendation, and with it the pressure from my parents to start acting like a role model. That was code for don't make waves. It always was. Even when Jackson punched a hole in the wall after being told he couldn't borrow the car, he was given a pass. Teenage hormones, my mom said. He'll grow out of it. Meanwhile, if I so much as sighed too loudly during dinner, I got a 30-minute lecture about tone. So when my grandparents showed up in June, it felt like oxygen flooding a room that had gone stale. They weren't perfect, but they listened, asked questions, looked me in the eye. And for the first time in years, someone in my family cared what I wanted without me having to beg for it. I don't think they planned to intervene, not at first. But I think they noticed the imbalance right away. The way Jackson dominated the room. The way my parents shrugged off everything I said. The way I stayed quiet, not out of peace, but habit. And maybe, just maybe, they decided it was time someone else had a say. That's how the birthday plan came together. Quietly. Strategically. 2 days before Grandma pulled me aside. I remember her words exactly. "You've spent years being told to be the bigger person. When's the last time someone was big enough to choose you?" I didn't have an answer, but she did. And what came next, that was the beginning of the shift. The beginning of something small but powerful. For the first time in years, I didn't just feel seen, I felt backed, and that made all the difference. By the time my birthday rolled around, the tension in the house had already started to bubble beneath the surface. Jackson was growing suspicious. He hated surprises, unless they were for him. And he definitely didn't like being left out of the loop. He kept hovering around conversations between me and Grandma Ruth, asking weirdly specific questions like, "You're not making me eat tofu or something, right?" I shrugged him off. I didn't owe him anything. Not this time. My parents, of course, were blissfully unaware or pretended to be. My mom was busy trying to get Marvin to download some real estate app she'd been promoting. My dad spent most of his time in the garage fiddling with tools he never actually used. They were too distracted to notice that something was shifting, that I was no longer playing by the same rules. On the day of the dinner, everything looked normal on the surface. We all got dressed. Jackson wore his usual half-ironed button-up with sleeves rolled too high like he was about to DJ someone's Sweet 16. My mom complimented him twice before even looking at me. I'd put actual effort into my outfit. A navy collared shirt, black jeans, even a hint of cologne I knew Grandma liked. No one noticed. It wasn't new. I didn't expect them to. But the silence stung anyway. We piled into the SUV, Jackson already half asleep in the back seat with his earbuds in. I sat next to the window, gripping my phone like it could anchor me. I wasn't scared, not really. Just waiting. Waiting for the moment anything might finally go right. The car turned toward downtown. Jackson noticed first. "Wait, we're not going to Big Red's?" he asked, half sitting up. My dad paused. Marvin said he wanted to try something new. Jackson narrowed his eyes. "You're joking, right? Thai food? Are you trying to ruin my life?" I almost laughed. The drama was so predictable it felt rehearsed. Grandma leaned forward from the passenger seat, completely calm. "We've been reading great reviews about this place, very popular with the locals. It's called Lotus and Lime." My mom's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror toward me. I looked straight ahead. The restaurant was beautiful. Warm lights, soft music, the air rich with spice and citrus. A server led us to a corner table, private but still in view of the main dining area. I felt my heartbeat slow, like maybe I could breathe here. The menus arrived. Jackson flipped his open, like it was a personal attack. "What even is half this stuff?" he muttered. "None of this is normal food." My mom gave him a warning glance, but it didn't land. He pushed his chair back, crossed his arms. "I'm not eating mushrooms. If someone tries to feed me mushrooms, I'll puke." No one had even ordered yet. I tried to stay present. I asked questions about the specials. I thanked the waiter. I was polite. I was everything I'd always been raised to be. And Jackson? He turned every minute into a performance. He complained about the music being creepy. He said the utensils smelled like soap. At one point, he poked a spring roll and said loud enough for the next table to hear, "This looks like something that came out of a turtle's butt." My grandparents were mortified. I could see the way Marvin's jaw tightened. My dad tried to laugh it off, but the humor didn't reach his eyes. When the food arrived, it was perfect. Sweet and savory fresh herbs, blending with heat, perfectly balanced. I took a bite of yellow curry, the same dish I'd been craving for over a year, and I almost teared up. It tasted like care, like someone had thought of me, just me, and made something beautiful. But the moment didn't last. Jackson started mock vomiting. "Oh my God, it's spicy. You're trying to kill me." He grabbed his glass of Sprite and chugged half of it dramatically. I looked down at my plate, cheeks, hot heart sinking. And then came the moment that changed everything. Jackson slammed the rest of his Sprite onto the table, leaned toward me and said under his breath, "This is why nobody likes you, Noah. You're selfish and boring and weird." And then without warning, he tossed what was left of his drink straight at me. Ice soda lime, all of it, soaking through my shirt, splashing across the table, dripping onto the floor. For a second, no one moved. I heard the server gasp. I saw my mom's mouth open. My dad muttered Jackson like the word itself might do something. And me? I sat still, blinked once, then smiled. Because that was it. The mask was off. The golden boy, the center of attention, the one they'd all protected and defended, he just humiliated me in front of everyone. And there was no excuse. No, he's just young. No, he didn't mean it. It was raw, unfiltered spite. And for the first time in years, everyone saw it. I excused myself from the table quietly, walked to the bathroom, dried off the best I could with paper towels, stared at my reflection for a minute. And I felt something crack open. Not pain, not shame, power. The kind that comes when you finally stop pretending the people around you are better than they are. I wasn't going to yell, I wasn't going to cry, but I was done. And from that moment on, things were going to change, whether they liked it or not. I stayed in that bathroom longer than I needed to. Not because I was upset I wasn't. I was calm, focused. Everything was clearer now, like someone had finally wiped the fog off a mirror I'd been staring into my whole life. My shirt was still damp and the sticky sweetness of the soda clung to my skin, but all I could think about was how freeing it felt to not care anymore. Jackson had thrown the first stone, and this time I wasn't going to pretend it didn't hurt. I wasn't going to keep the peace. Not for him. Not for my parents. Not even for show. When I walked back to the table, they all looked up. My mom opened her mouth to say something, but I beat her to it. "It's fine," I said simply, sliding back into my seat like nothing had happened. My dad cleared his throat. My grandma gave me a long, searching look. She didn't say a word, but I could feel her approval like a warm current beneath the awkward silence. Jackson didn't apologize. Of course he didn't. He just leaned back, crossed his arms, and stared at his untouched plate, like he was the one who'd been wronged. The rest of dinner went by in clipped conversation and barely concealed tension. I didn't care. I finished my curry, thanked the staff, and kept my tone pleasant, calm. That's the thing about being quiet for so long. People forget that silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it's just strategy. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me. Each rotation was like a countdown. I wasn't angry, not in the yelling, door-slamming way my family was used to. I was done giving them reactions they could label dramatic. Instead, I was going to let the truth speak for itself. I didn't need to scream to be heard. I just needed to stop playing along. And I knew exactly where to start. The first move was small. I stopped engaging. No more forced conversations over dinner. No more pretending to laugh at Jackson's terrible jokes. I answered questions with short, direct responses. I kept my tone polite, but distant, detached. My parents noticed, of course. My mom asked if I was still mad about dinner, and I shrugged. "No, I'm just tired." My dad told me to let it go already. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. They were uncomfortable, and for once it wasn't my job to fix that. But it wasn't enough. I wanted them to see what they'd created. I wanted them to understand that the quiet, obedient version of me they'd grown so comfortable with was gone. So I started documenting. Notes, screenshots, voice memos. Every time Jackson did something cruel or manipulative, every time my parents ignored it or made excuses. I didn't plan to use it at first, but it felt good to have proof. To know that if things ever went too far, I wouldn't just be another teenager acting out. I'd have receipts. Then, almost as if on cue, Jackson escalated. He always had a flair for dramatics, but now he was being spiteful on purpose. One morning, I found my notebook. My personal one where I wrote short stories and journal entries with pages torn out and crumpled in the trash. Another day he unplugged my phone while it was charging just to use the outlet for his Xbox. When I said something, he smirked and said, "What, gonna cry again?" Like at the restaurant. My parents brushed it off. "He's just teasing," my dad said. "You're too sensitive," my mom added. But I wasn't sensitive. I was watching, calculating. I knew revenge wasn't supposed to feel like strategy, but this wasn't about getting even. This was about reclaiming space, and timing mattered. So when my grandparents asked if I wanted to spend the weekend at their Airbnb to get some air, I said yes. And once I got there, I told them everything. Not in a dramatic rant, not even with much emotion. I just laid it out. What had happened? What had been happening for years? How I'd spent birthdays pretending to enjoy myself. How every small request I'd ever made was treated like a burden. How being the older brother meant being overlooked, not respected. And when I finished, my grandma didn't rush to hug me. She didn't start crying or whisper that everything would be okay. She just nodded and said, "Then let's make sure this birthday ends differently." And that was the moment I realized I wasn't alone. That for once I had backup. People who didn't just see me, but believed me. So we sat down together, the three of us, and started making a plan. I wasn't going to confront anyone. I wasn't going to demand apologies or force conversations that always ended the same way. I was just going to live visibly, eat what I liked, speak when I wanted, take up space in rooms where I'd been taught to shrink. And as simple as it sounded, I knew it would rattle them more than any tantrum ever could. Because when someone builds a version of you that's easy to ignore, the scariest thing you can do is exist fully, loudly, proudly, without shame. And I was finally ready to do just that. The next Monday, I walked into the kitchen while my mom was making coffee. Said, "I'm staying with Grandma and Grandpa this week, just until the weekend." She turned from the counter, eyebrows raised like she hadn't expected me to speak. "Is something wrong?" she asked too casually. I shook my head. "Nope, just need some quiet." I could see the flicker of confusion in her eyes, maybe even guilt, but she didn't say anything else. She didn't stop me. And that was all I needed. At the Airbnb, things were calm. My grandparents gave me space without tiptoeing around me. In the evenings, we made simple dinners and watched movies I actually liked. No mockery, no forced compromises, just ease. I helped Marvin with the garden in the mornings. Ruth asked about my writing and actually listened to the answers. For the first time in years, I felt like a person again, not a prop in Jackson's endless drama. Meanwhile, back at home, Jackson was unraveling. I didn't have to be there to know it. My absence left a void he couldn't fill, and that terrified him. No one to mock, no easy target. When you're used to everything orbiting around you, even silence can feel like rejection. He texted me once dry, "So are you like mad or something?" I didn't respond. My mom called later that night and left a voicemail saying they hoped I'd be home by Friday because we're having family dinner. Again, I said nothing. That Friday, I came back on my terms. I arrived an hour before dinner and walked in like I didn't owe anyone anything. Jackson was on the couch, playing some first-person shooter volume cranked so loud the walls vibrated. He glanced at me, then did a double take. "You're back," he said. No apology, no greeting. Just that, as if I were the one who'd been gone too long. I ignored him and went upstairs. Dinner was awkward. My parents acted like nothing had happened, asking about school and whether I'd started any new writing projects. I kept my answers short. My silence made them squirm. It was subtle but effective. I wasn't arguing. I wasn't sulking. I just wasn't performing anymore. I could feel them trying to figure out where the shift had come from, but they couldn't say anything without admitting the truth they'd spent years ignoring. That night, I posted a photo of my birthday dinner at Lotus and Lime on Instagram. Nothing dramatic, just a plate of curry, a short caption, "Best birthday meal I've ever had." Within an hour, friends commented things like, "Finally, and you deserved this," and even one from a classmate I barely knew. "Your brother's such a little tyrant. Glad someone did something." That last one made me pause. I hadn't said anything directly about Jackson, but people noticed. They always had. They just didn't speak up until I did. 2 days later, Jackson retaliated the only way he knew how, publicly and immaturely. He posted a TikTok with a duet-style video pretending to gag, while a clip of Thai food played beside him. The caption, "When your brother forces the whole family to eat grass for his birthday." It was pathetic, but it gained traction. Kids from school shared it. Some laughed, others DM'd me saying he was out of line. I didn't comment. I didn't repost. I screenshotted everything and saved it in a folder labeled Jackson's Greatest Hits. Then came the kicker. At lunch the next day, he tried to prank me in the cafeteria. A couple of his friends dared him to dump a tray of sautéed mushrooms onto my lunch. I saw it coming. I saw the smirk, the shift in his posture, the way he tried to be sneaky, but still wanted everyone watching. But I didn't stop him. I let him do it. And when the mushrooms hit my tray, I looked him dead in the eye and said, calm as ever, "That's assault, Jackson. Maybe not the legal kind, but you just humiliated your own brother in front of a room full of witnesses. Hope it was worth it." He didn't laugh. His friends didn't either. I stood up, dumped my ruined tray, and walked straight to the principal's office. No yelling, no whining. Just facts. I explained what happened, pulled out the screenshots, described the ongoing pattern of behavior. It wasn't dramatic, it was clinical. And it was enough. The school called my parents. My mom showed up later that day looking exhausted and embarrassed. She asked why I didn't tell her sooner. I told her I had just not in ways she ever cared to hear. And I left it at that. Jackson got a 2-day suspension and mandatory sessions with the school counselor. My parents didn't defend him this time. They couldn't. The evidence was too clear. The silence around the dinner table that night was suffocating, but this time, it wasn't on me. I wasn't the one carrying the weight anymore. They were. And I was just getting started. After Jackson's suspension, everything in our house got quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, thick, like the air before a storm. No one said much at dinner anymore. My mom stopped trying to force conversation. My dad retreated even deeper into his garage projects. Jackson barely came out of his room unless he had to. And when he did, he looked at me differently. Not with guilt, not with anger, but with fear. He wasn't used to consequences. He was used to being untouchable. And now that illusion was gone. The fallout wasn't explosive. There were no screaming matches or door slamming, just a slow unraveling of the system that had always put him first. For once, the spotlight wasn't on me to keep things smooth. I let the awkwardness sit, let the discomfort stretch. I wasn't going to fix it for them. I wasn't going to shrink myself so they could feel better. I'd done that for too long. Now I was just existing. And that was enough to shake the ground beneath their feet. My grandparents, of course, knew everything. They didn't say "I told you so," but I could see the pride in their eyes when I showed them the screenshots, when I told them how I calmly handled everything without stooping to Jackson's level. Marvin clapped me on the back. Ruth gave me a look I hadn't seen before, not pity, not worry, just respect, like I'd finally stepped into the version of myself they always knew I had in me. And honestly, I felt it too. At school, things shifted. People who'd always stayed neutral before started nodding at me in the halls. I wasn't suddenly popular, but I wasn't invisible anymore either. A few classmates even thanked me, said they had siblings like Jackson, and wished they'd stood up for themselves sooner. That part surprised me the most. I hadn't done any of this for attention. I just wanted space to breathe. But the fact that it resonated with others, that made it feel even more worth it. Jackson, on the other hand, spiraled. He tried to act like he didn't care, but it was obvious. He became short-tempered, snappier than usual. He fought more with our parents. He got benched during a football game after mouthing off at a coach. I wasn't happy about it, not really. Watching him crash wasn't satisfying, it was just sad. But I didn't step in. I didn't offer to smooth it over. Because this was the road he'd paved for himself. And it was about time he walked it. My parents eventually sat me down a week after everything blew up. We were in the living room. No TV, no distractions, just the three of us. My mom looked tired. My dad looked uncomfortable. We didn't realize how bad it had gotten my mom started. We should have listened more, paid closer attention. I stayed quiet, waiting to see if it was real or just another performance. You've always been so mature, my dad added. And I think we leaned on that too much, expected you to carry more than your share. I nodded, but I didn't offer them comfort. I wasn't angry, not in that moment, but I wasn't going to make it easier for them either. They needed to sit in that discomfort, to really feel it, because maybe then they'd remember it next time they were tempted to excuse cruelty as just teasing or dismiss hurt as oversensitivity. After that, things didn't magically become perfect. We didn't suddenly transform into some warm and fuzzy sitcom family, but they tried. My mom started asking me what I wanted more often, not just assuming. My dad made an effort to show up to the yearbook showcase even if he left early. And Jackson, he kept his distance, which was honestly all I needed from him. What mattered most wasn't their change. It was mine. I'd spent so long bending myself into shapes that made other people comfortable. So long being quiet so others could be loud, being kind so others could be cruel. But now I knew better. I knew what I was worth, and I wasn't going to let any one family or not convince me otherwise again. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had finally stopped asking for permission to exist. Looking back, it's strange how something as simple as a birthday dinner became the turning point in my life. Not because of the food or the restaurant or even the mess Jackson made with that glass of Sprite. It was about the principle. The years of being sidelined, of being told to compromise while others never had to. The moment I finally stood my ground wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet still and unshakably clear. And it changed everything. What happened wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't lash out. I didn't humiliate him back. I didn't become a version of myself I wouldn't respect. What I did was something harder. I drew a boundary, and I held it. I made it clear that I was done shrinking. I stopped pretending things were okay just to avoid making others uncomfortable. That I think is the part that shook them the most. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stopped playing my role. People always talk about family like it's supposed to be sacred, untouchable. But the truth is, family doesn't give you a free pass to treat someone like they don't matter. If anything, it should mean treating them with more care, more respect. For years, I thought love meant tolerating everything. But now I understand that real love has limits. Real love doesn't ask you to disappear. I'm not going to lie, there's still tension sometimes. Jackson is who he is. He hasn't had a total transformation, and maybe he never will. But I've changed. And because of that, our dynamic is different. He can't get the same rise out of me. He can't push the same buttons, and slowly he's realizing that. Whether or not he chooses to grow from it is up to him. That part's no longer my responsibility. As for my parents, they're still learning. Some days they get it right. Some days they slip back into old patterns. But now I call it out. I don't let things slide because it's easier. I speak up. And slowly, I think they're beginning to understand that being the easy child doesn't mean being the invisible one. That just because I didn't make noise didn't mean I wasn't hurting. And if you're someone who relates to any of this, if you've ever felt like your role in the family was to make peace, to shrink, to let others shine while you sat in the shadows, I want you to hear this. You don't owe anyone your silence, not even the people who raised you. You have the right to take up space, to have preferences, to say no. And yes, it might rattle people at first, especially the ones who benefited from your silence. But trust me, it's worth it. I didn't get the perfect apology. I didn't get a big emotional reconciliation. But I got something better. I got clarity. I got distance. And most importantly, I got myself back. So if you're sitting there right now thinking about all the times you stayed quiet to keep the peace, maybe this is your sign, your moment, your birthday dinner. Because sometimes all it takes is one night, one meal, one small act of defiance to remind the world and yourself that you matter too. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, leave a comment below. Share your own experience. You're not alone. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Because here we speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Until next time, take care of yourself and don't ever apologize for existing fully. You deserve to be seen. You always have.